Welcome, everyone, to Friday 15. My name is Brian Beck, here with Andy Hoare for our weekly Master B2B session where we talk about all kinds of key issues, fun stuff around B2B commerce, breaking news, all kinds of good stuff. Andy, welcome to our weekly Friday 15.
Yeah, good to be here. It's the summer.
Yes.
Officially. So that's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
It's not the time of the year when it's the same temperature in Chicago as it is in LA. That's what I think about.
That's right. Or hotter. Right, exactly. So, welcome, everyone. We got a great topic we're going to talk about today related to one of the hottest issues, which our practitioners face, which is gaining and sustaining executive alignment. We'll get into that in just a moment. But first, we have our breaking news. Let's bring up our slides here, Andy. Here we go. Hopefully that thing doesn't play again. Here we go. Where are the slides? There they are. Well, Andy, what the heck is this? NBC convinced convinced Michaels to embrace his AI voice for Olympic coverage. How is this related to B2B?
All right, so we always talk about AI, and I thought this would be kind of fun with the Olympics coming up. So this is what's going to be known as AI Al. And what he did was he licensed his name, image, likeness, and most importantly, his voice to NBC, who's now going to use Al Michaels' voice to do daily summaries of what happened at the Olympics. Now, what's fascinating about this is he's not going to have to do any work. They're going to have this stuff written by other people or probably software or AI, and he's just going to voice it, sitting in his house doing absolutely nothing. I'm sure he got paid a big check for this. This could be an interesting harbinger of what's to come with a lot of famous people where they can license their stuff out for commercials and other things. Anyway, just thought it'd be fun to mention. We could see this come to B2B e-commerce at some point. CEOs make AI their voices. We know there are many languages that you can speak now. So anyway, this will be front and center, kind of the first experience like it. But yeah, I wanted to introduce a little levity to this. But on a more serious note,
well, it does sound like a bit of a train wreck, but let's see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Maybe I can replace you with AI at some point.
We'll see. Maybe this is AI. How do you know this is me?
All right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. Well, serious note. Yes. This was some breaking news this week. Amazon Business introduces new technologies to save time and reduce costs for business customers. Andy, this is my world, right? Amazon with my Insiba business. And, this research Amazon produced recently found that close to 49% of procurement teams felt that business buying is cumbersome, convoluted, and time-consuming instead of, convenient, intuitive. So ultimately, they're looking, and one of the key reasons they gave for that was really it was about the tools they were using was causing them a lot of challenges. So Amazon Business is head on after this. And what's fascinating about these tools they've introduced, it really is about saving the buyer time. And there's three. Then they released 6, 7, 8 different tool sets, but there's three I want to mention that I think are really interesting. One is they've really improved their budget management process. So in other words, setting spending thresholds, anticipating, when a company is going to run out of budget. Amazon, if you're buying through Amazon Business, you can set up spending thresholds that will, talk about or predict when the budget's about to expire. They do pre-purchase approvals. They have options to create purchase orders within this. That's one big step forward they've taken. One of the really interesting things, though, Andy, is guided buying, right? So what they're doing is they're allowing someone who owns the administrator of a business account and allows them to actually set the product assortment for their buyers in their organization. So they can say within the Amazon assortment, it's almost like they're creating their own mini Amazon experience where they can highlight products that they want their operational people to see, the sort of preferred suppliers. This is within Amazon. This is incredible. And they've also integrated quite a bit on the quoting side to allow for larger purchases within the portal. So upwards of, those above, $10,000, they've integrated some additional functionality. Anyhow, it's really interesting to see what Amazon's doing here. They're all about making the buyer's job easier in B2B, and they're, continuing to raise the bar.
Well, the only thing that shocks me about that is only 49% of the people said it was confusing and convoluted. That's shocking to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, seriously, right? 50% say that's okay. Well, that 49% still provides a lot of market opportunity for folks like Amazon. So, let's get to our topic. And our topic this week is what is the most difficult part of gaining and sustaining digital buy-in for investments from B2B executives or for B2Bs leading this effort. And Andy, we had some really, this is a topic that came up at our summit back in early June, where we were talking about, different, the highest and most important topics for the practitioner. This was one that in our pre-conference or pre-summit interviews came right to the surface. And we even did some research around it, but this was a topic we had, and we actually had a roundtable specifically about it. You want to tell the audience about that?
Yeah, here's some pictures from it, but it was led by Steve Martinez, who was formerly of Univar. He had a digital there. He was also at Granger for many years. And they literally talked for an hour about, hey, what does it take to do this? And Steve was kind enough to memorialize all that they discussed. And he put together a document, which is very long and very detailed and very impressive. If you want a copy of it, let us know. We can get you a copy of it. But what we thought we'd do today is kind of summarize or highlight some of the more important things that kind of stood out from it. But before we do that, we thought it'd be interesting to kind of tie this into what we've seen recently in the research. So what we saw, why don't you drive? So in our recent research, we did a report, a second phase of a maturity model report called Taking Your Strategy to the Next Level earlier this month. And what we found is that it is now the case in B2B commerce that leadership is on board. So 94% of respondents said that basically the CEOs get it. They get digital is important. That's fast. That's a new thing. It's very important. It's also kind of eliminated the need for people to persuade others in the organization about why digital is important.
Yep.
It's also the case that budget is now finally available. This is maybe the biggest insight that we've found, and overwhelmingly so. Companies are now saying, look, our executive team's giving us budget. So they're on board with it. They're giving budget. But before we're all ready to dance in the streets and say, hey, this has finally been solved, inevitably, this is the case with the budget, with the authority is now coming pressure on ROI. So companies are saying, yeah, do the digital. Here's the money, but it better produce a return. Why is this relevant? Because Steve's conversation was all about how you get people on board with this and how do you sustain it. So there were really three phases that he talked about. Literally, like I just said, building the case, which is, identifying approaches to influence key leaders for investment and support. That, perennially was the difficult part. Two, measuring the value. This is a biggie. Defining and measuring success for the digital initiatives. Well, you can get everybody on board, but if you can't measure what's happening, then you're inevitably going to get to this ROI discussion where you can't prove there was an ROI, and then you're back to square one. The last one, and not to be diminished here, is sustaining the alignment. So let's say you convinced everybody, you're able to measure the value, people are on board with that idea, but then the CFO changes. Right. Or the price of the digital goes up dramatically, or the price of hiring people goes up dramatically, or there's a new thing like analytics that you need to bring on board, or AI. How do you keep people on board? And this is really about ensuring continued support and awareness. So it's a multi-part effort. And so we intentionally put this in. These are all the insights they came up with. There's like 11 under building the case. What we want to do is actually just talk about three that sort of support the same idea, which is.
And Andy, this came out of Steve's roundtable, right? These are, so for those of you listening on the podcast, we have a sheet here that shows 11 different things that came out of the roundtable in terms of this particular element. But go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, thanks for your point that I forget that some of this is on a podcast too. But again, there must have been a hell of a lot of things discussed in like 50 minutes, because this was just 1/3 of it that had 11 insights. Right. So, for those of you watching, you'll be able to go back and watch this again and kind of digest all 11. But the three that we want to talk about here, all of the word champion essentially in them. Identifying somebody early on who's a big champion, finding a customer as a champion, and then also identifying internal constituencies or champions. Why is this so important? Well, you and I have been through this a lot. We work with a lot of clients over the years. You have the greatest business case on the planet, but if you don't have somebody there to make it, it's not going to happen. So that's really the takeaway from this, is when you're building the business case, find the people internally and externally who are going to be your champions, who are going to make the case for you. If you don't have these advocates, you're not going to get very far. That's really, I think, the important insight here.
If you go back one there, Andy,
Yeah.
I have this case study in my book, and I remember this vividly because I worked with this company called Illumina. We're a leader in biotechnology. They're about $3.5 billion manufacturer. And really, one of the things that drove them, the champion argument, is really key. Now they're getting more than half of their revenue from digital channels, and this is a genetics equipment manufacturer. I mean, this isn't like a fashion apparel company, right? It's not what you would suspect would be have the kind of penetration in digital they have. But one of the key things in building the case before they got started with all of this back, this is 8 years ago, was that champion. And that champion in their case was the customers saying, we want this capability to order via e-commerce and other digital channels. We need it, or we're going to shift our spending. I mean, it was almost existential in some ways. So there was there's really something to this champion piece that came out of the discussion.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the shift thing, because that's actually a great segue to this slide, which is about the metrics. Now, we all know this is critically important. And this is maybe the first thing you should do, is identify exactly and precisely what you're going to measure and how you're going to justify it. Because there are metrics around basically revenue and cost reduction, customer satisfaction. That's kind of that first one around alignment on metrics. And you got to get people on board with it, because if they're not on board with those metrics, you're going to end up failing. But the one I want to spend just a second on here is measuring channel shift. You and I have talked about this extensively. You literally just mentioned it, that at Illumina, it was people defecting to other channels. Well, if you don't identify this group and understand in detail that, I always joke about the people coming in the front door incremental, the people going at the back door are the channel shift. So it's a lift and shift thing. You got to be lifting, so you got to have new revenue coming in, but you also can't allow people to walk out the back door and go to competitors, other channels that you're not measuring, et cetera. So put a process in place to make sure you're measuring channel shift, that you don't just ignore the fact that while you're bringing people in the front door, a bunch of people going out the back door.
Yeah, I remember talking to Steve Baruch and I, who we've had on some of our podcasts, webcasts, et cetera. Andy, he's the former CMO at MSC Industrial. He talked when I remember our conversations. Part of it was about this shift piece, and it was really existential, right? I mean, think about it. It's the business case is always about, hey, what's the growth opportunity? That's where the CEO goes, the board goes, things like that. But a lot of this is, and I don't want to call it defensive, but it's mandatory. I mean, it's sort of like this existential thing where if you're not thinking about it, your customer base is going to move to other suppliers, other channels, et cetera, where they have, where they're because of the buyer has changed, right? And so you've got a different buyer now in the role. They have different behaviors. So it's an existential thing, and sometimes that can be a little tricky to measure. The way MSC would do it, they would look at their overall each customer, understanding what they're buying from them. Are they expanding their wallet share, which is my favorite metric, right? Share of wallet overall in the business, not just e-commerce. This is overall share, right? And so that was one way to think about it. And so when you think about it that way, even if there's shifting channel behavior within your business, you're still seeing the overall impact that digital is having, because it might lift your sales through your EDI, or through your Salesforce, or through your call center, or through some other channel. But it's an important consideration. Absolutely.
Yeah, most of the research I've seen on this is when people shift to an online channel, it becomes a hybrid channel. It's not going from offline to online. It's really online influenced offline and online only. And they end up spending a lot more. So you shouldn't be afraid of it, but you sure as hell should measure it.
That's right.
So the last part here is how do you sustain all this? So let's say you got this going, but people change, like I said earlier, customer expectations rise, and you're coming back to the well asking for more money, and they're like, well, wait a minute, I haven't really seen this thing succeed. I know we have it, but where are we relative to others? Where are we relative to our own KPIs, et cetera? Here, I think the important point is really around communicating success and failure, and not just one or the other, but both. And being honest about it and saying, look, this is where we're doing well and this is where we're not doing well. Why the not doing well part? Because the beautiful part about digital is you can iterate.
Right.
And so really sophisticated, smart digital people recognize that this is an opportunity not just to be honest, but also to show people that, hey, if there's something that's wrong, this is not decisive. We can fix it. And so, and then the last thing is really about motivating your team internally, and recognizing people who are doing a bang up job. Well, in digital, a lot of times that's not well known. There are people who are writing code. There are people who are producing content who don't get recognized. But in digital, that stuff is absolutely critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think the, on the successes and failures piece, do you think, I'm curious, Andy, your opinion, do you need to have a C-suite, a CEO in particular that understands that this is an iterative process? Do you have to have some digital native thinking in the C-suite, in order to understand that? Because, as you were talking, I'm thinking about the Amazon approach, test and fail, and learn, right? And that's a whole culture that's grown up at that company for the last 30 years. That's not typical of a B2B company where it's business case everything to death. Make sure you guaranteed you're going to get the return and all that stuff. Is that anyway? Do you need that digital thinking at the top? Do you think to be successful with that?
Ideally, yes, but work with what you've got. I think it'll speak for itself. The beauty
Okay.
about digital is if you're showing that you're able to iterate and succeed, even people who don't have experience with that will generally appreciate it. So
Mm-hmm.
I know we're running short on time here, but final slide. Well, we polled this as we always do, and we asked the question, which of these phases do you think is most important? And decisively here it was measuring the value, or measuring the value, as we put in there.
Measuring the value. Yeah, I had a
Yeah,
few
well,
typos in this. Maybe I did this at 5 a.m. I think, but well, the question is, what is the most difficult thing in getting and sustaining executive buy-in for these investments? And it's measuring the value came out, and fascinating to me. Building the case was only 13%, whereas measuring the value said 48% said that as the most difficult thing. And I think that's true and reflects the complexity of B2B, Andy. Think about it, right? You got folks that maybe people are researching online, but they're buying through the EDI platform. How do you draw the attribution? How do you close the loop? These are things that companies solution providers are out there looking to solve. But I recognize this. So to me, this is a move along the curve. It's exciting.
yeah, you want to send somebody into convulsions in digital.
Yeah.
Here, try this phrase on them: cross-channel attribution.
Right. Right.
This is the stuff that's hard to do. And
Yeah.
so, but I agree with you. I think it's interesting. 5 years ago, I think building the case
Yep.
would have been the majority or plurality answer. Today, it's measuring value. Maybe in
Mhm.
5 years, it'll be sustaining alignment, and that'll show that we've made some progress here.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I know you want to kind of get to the conclusion here, but this fall we've got some interesting roundtables to come up. You want to talk about it? I highlighted the
Yeah,
ones
we
that
do.
we put the date on.
Thank you for doing that. So, yeah, we have some executive roundtables coming up across the country. We're doing more than we ever have. This is a great format. People are really engaged in these events. These are 20 to 30 people getting together for a 2-hour roundtable discussion on a hot topic. We're going to be talking about digital experience this fall at all of these and some of the fundamentals there. Of course, we'll bring AI into the conversation as well. But these are 2 hours of conversation followed by cocktails and dinner. Basically getting about 5 hours of great quality time with your peers. We get VPs of e-commerce, chief digital officers, directors of marketing and e-commerce. It's really a great group. We're doing these in Denver, Chicago, New York, LA, Atlanta, Dallas, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Minneapolis. So if any of those cities, you're in or you're close to or can get to, go to our website, masterb2b.com, click on events, future events, and you'll see a list and you can register there. There is no cost for practitioners to join us. So excited for those. And Andy, as always, we have our forum, which is full of all kinds of folks asking questions. Just got another great question in yesterday from some folks, a VP of e-commerce. And, this is people just sharing and learning about from one another on topics that they're, that are top of mind for them. You can ask about solution providers, et cetera. This is only practitioners. It's free. We encourage you to join. Go to masterb2b.com forum, click on that, and you can submit an application to join us. And as always, these podcasts are available. This format, our Friday 15 is available via podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Encourage you to listen to it there while you're doing laundry, driving the car, at the gym, whatever. So thanks everyone for joining us again today. Once again, a Friday 20. We'll get there, folks. Anyway, Andy, any final words for our listeners?
No, just enjoy the summer, and we'll see you next Friday.
We won't see you next Friday because we're taking July 4th off, but that's July 5th.
I'll be here. Oh, you're not going to be here, but I'll be here. So I guess
Yeah.
it'll just
You
be
do it by
me,
yourself.
or I'll do it by myself.
Awesome.
No, you're right. We won't be
see
here
you.
next week.
That's right. We'll see you soon. Thanks again for listening.